Oh, what am I doing? So John Round,
I'm the last guy.
that depends. There might be some other guys coming.
You're an echo. It's an echo.
Oh, you know what? I'm hearing it in there. Huh, I'm not on right now.
Maybe it's me.
Not, yeah, mine was
I'm
muted.
on it too. Yeah. Hey, no,
Don't think so.
Nope.
I think we're good.
right, let's make sure. Muted, muted, muted. Not hearing any
I'm
echoing.
not hearing the echo. Whatever it was, it's gone away.
Goody, okay.
I'm not sure.
Oh. Hello? I'm hearing it. Hello? Uh-oh. Huh, I bet it's me again. No, because I wasn't on before.
So there's no audio going through there.
Is there-
Whoever's the host might need to turn down the volume on their computer.
Greg's the host,
Okay.
because I think I'm hearing it out of there, but
I'm hearing it here.
you're hearing it where? Over there?
I'm hearing it from there.
Well, I have my hearing aids on, so they never tell me the right direction.
They're coming from the speakers.
You shouldn't be coming. To change the format.
There should be a mic, there should be a mic picking up.
No, the mic. is not.
Yeah.
There's no audio. There isn't.
Hello, do you hear it over there still?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Susan Beckman, are you hearing an echo?
We won't do anybody.
No,
Okay, so you're not hearing an echo.
no, not when you're speaking at all.
Thank you, ma'am.
So long as you're hearing that. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. It is 6:30 on Monday, November 21st, and I would like to call the select board meeting to order. We are being recorded by 1623 Studios as well as Zoom. Let's see, roll call attendance. John Round,
Here.
Brian Solacey,
Here.
Kathy Bellata, Ann Harrison, and Becky Jakes is here. We've got a full doc. Okay, first on the agenda, do I have any public comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go on to the first item, which is National Grid hearing. Okay. Greg, did you
So
want to
motion,
take-
motion be in order to open up the public hearing?
that would be good.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Harrison.
Sorry, he's dead.
Why do I do that? I love you, and I remember your dad well, very well. John Round,
Yes.
Why are we going any further? When is this supposed to time now?
Brian Solacey,
I'm here.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jakes, yes. Okay. So. Take it away, National Grid.
Sabita Mahabir, representing National Grid, 44 River Street, Beverly, Massachusetts. This is to provide an upgraded service for 9 Ashland.
Okay, questions from the board. John Round,
When is this planned?
Not yet,
It's not on the docket yet. It's just,
not till it passes here.
okay. And how long is this expected to take when it is? What is the time frame? This work?
Should be about a day.
Oh, okay. All right. No other questions?
Brian,
No, a day on National Ave on a circle.
Kathy,
Agreed, I have no questions.
Ann,
Will the street be passable while the work is underway?
It's a narrow street, so hopefully they'll only be using half of it, and they should have police detail there.
Okay, that street at this time of year is used for moving boats, which are big.
Yes, we will work with Crawford's Boat Yard on that.
Crockers and Manchester.
Yes.
the last question is just to verify that the road will be returned to as was or better condition. Right.
If that's not over the winter, especially this time of year, it may not settle right onto the springtime. Just give us a call. Deal with it at that time.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
and Becky Jakes says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, second Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
And Becky Jakes says yes. All right. Next up, we have the topic of the special town meeting review. And before we get started on this, I would like to make some comments that there are some issues or aspects which are specifically under the purview of the select board. Alan is on the meeting this evening. There was never any slight intended. And this is,
I have a procedural.
yes,
We listed that at 6:45.
oh, thank you. My apologies. No, all right, so you're right, we will wait, and can we go to consent agenda? I would like to pull out B, the fish traps. Anybody have anything else to pull out under consent agenda?
Not pull out, but just a slight clarification on the meeting minutes.
Yep,
So it was on page,
thanks, Ann.
sorry, page 6, I think, of the meeting minutes. Just a little rephrasing, where it's, under the liaison updates. It made it sound like Cell Signaling Technologies had a separate meeting with the planning board, and that's not what happened. It's Cell Signaling Tech gave an update on their project. So just a little wordsmithing there, and then I'll go with the rest. Thank you.
Anything else? May I then have a motion to approve the minutes of November 7th and to accept the very generous donation to the wind field from Gar Morse, including a letter of thanks to be written.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded Kathy Bellata, roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata, Brian Solacey,
Yes.
John Round,
Yes,
and Becky Jakes says yes as well. And again, thank you, Gar. Since we still have time, liaison updates,
Shall we take up the question on the fish traps?
we can do that. I just had a question about that and regarding the fish traps is if for some reason something happens and the equipment needs to be removed, I didn't see anywhere in the applications or the information that has any removal oversight.
So that is something that Ryan would have as harbor master.
Okay,
So he, if there was an issue,
and he already says this is good.
right.
Okay.
But if something were to arise, he could address it.
Okay, because the only other thing is it has also Division of Marine Fisheries Approval Number 272R on a couple of the pages. But then there's an older document, which is the map that we received. And this is the same one we receive every time this comes up for renewal. But I didn't know if this is, and it says 272, but there's no R, and I don't know if that has any significance. And this is we've been doing this for years, so.
Oh, I see. It doesn't have the R on it. Is that?
Yeah, I know, is the R like a revision or something? Does it?
Renewal.
Okay, all right, that was my only question. Or questions. Okay, and I just was looking for that clarification, but it would not hold me up in approving the fish trap license. Anybody have any other questions about that?
yeah, just a couple of questions. So we have approved this in previous years. And I've had personal experience with it, coming upon it unexpectedly.
Mhm.
There really aren't any markers there. If you're moving along at 20 miles an hour in a boat and all of a sudden it's there, it's maybe 1.5 to 2 feet below the water,
Right,
it's an issue. I just wondered whether there have been markers that normally would be there but weren't there, or what the story is. I assume that the previous fish traps have been in the same place.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, I know this spot. And if you don't know it's there and you're in a boat moving along and you all of a sudden look below the water and say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
There's something there and I don't know that they've had problems, but, I think I would have had a problem if I kept on going. But I just wondered if there are markers of some sort, because I didn't see any. And this is inland of that, what, Little Leg Island,
Right,
between that and the shoreline.
Yep.
yes.
And I don't know, what is like a half a football field, I don't know how big it is, but. Oh,
Yeah.
180 fathoms.
Yeah.
All right, that's 6 feet, right? 6 times 18, okay. Pretty big.
So I don't know the answer about the markers. We could certainly ask Brian about that.
All right, if you could, I'm just interested. I mean, I'm wary of that now. But about 2 years ago, I noted that it was there and there was no, I didn't even know what it was, except you look at it, it looks like a net under the water.
Right.
But it looks like something out of a James Bond film or something.
So do you
Right,
want to prove it?
Yeah.
Just those that make those inquiries, or do you want to hold off and get more information?
This has been around for a long
I would
time,
just say, I mean,
very long time, and I,
finding, that they have the appropriate marine mark, I mean, anything,
It should be
usually has the markings that stick out, right?
Maybe you're going.
Like lobster traps, I've seen the lobster trap,
well,
you know.
I would say whatever is required.
Yes,
to be-
I'm okay with whatever is required is there. Maybe it was somehow removed or not there when I was there. There was no, I mean, I looked around and I didn't see anything on the water that would indicate, there's something around here.
Sure.
So the state marking. Frank and Greg, and you'll let us know.
Yeah,
About that.
no
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the fish trap license for James and Andrew Santapolo, Paolo, I'm sorry, gentlemen, pending the verification of the required marking according to the state.
So moved.
Moved by John Round, seconded by Ann Harrison. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Ryan Solacey,
Yes,
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
And Becky Jakes says yes. Okay, that brings us, we have 3 minutes for liaisons. Brian?
not much. The rec department is moving along. They're researching sound attenuating issues with the pickleball. I think they have to get a budget together to get a sense of what's going on. So they're moving to CPA funding. That's basically everything else is status quo.
Anything on the Pine Street?
No.
Okay. And I know that the trustees, library trustees is going to be having an event coming up where it's Bookshop of Beverly Farms will be involved with donating a certain amount of proceeds they bring in, and I can find that, I'll forward that to Mom, if you'd like. The only reason I have it was because they wanted it sent along to book groups, which I'm going to do. Okay. We have a few seconds yet. And Ann Harrison, school committee or Concom?
They met on the same night,
Oh, that makes it very difficult. Yep.
and I haven't gone back and looked at the video of the school committee heard from Habib and Associates on the state of the Essex Elementary School and the middle high school. And the Essex Elementary School has a boiler that's very old. and a roof that's much packed. And it's an old school, and they strongly recommend that that we not put, that the school department not put lots of good money after bad.
Yep.
And there are two alternatives. One is basically a gut reconstruction. And the other is knock it down and build something new.
Mhm.
Because the school was built as a K-8, it is bigger than the MSBA will support for replacement. So if they renovate, they can keep the current footprint, which is, I think, about 20 or 25% bigger than they would be allowed to build.
Mhm.
And that decision is way, way down the line. And it would be heavily colored by MSBA's preferences. So
Yeah.
most of the discussion was, does it make sense to have a new school or a bigger school?
Yeah.
As far as the middle high school, there are some mechanicals that are going to need work. They think the roof will need work. One recommendation, which I found strange and check with Chuck about, is that they put in a water filtration system. Because the water, but I believe that the school gets the water more or less directly from Lincoln Street, so it's not mixed in much with the water that's treated. And it's the opinion of the Habib and Associates that it is rotting out their plumbing fixtures.
Oh, that's good.
And I did check with Chuck. And he said you can replace an awful lot of fixtures and pipe for $250,000, which is what they were suggesting for the filtration. And I think we should follow that, because if there is a need for a filtration system, and we're thinking about making changes at the Lincoln Street well, having to do with PFAS in the future, maybe we don't put $250,000 into a filtration in the school. They commended the school department on the maintenance of the middle high school. There are some rugs that are getting a little tired, but you know, 10 years of students running over rugs is to be
10 years
expected.
of students running over rugs.
And so in general, the maintenance is very good. And
Good.
that is actually is the report. And
Thank you.
that's taken us.
And now we will return to the special town meeting review. So first and foremost, I would like to again reiterate my apology to Alan Wilson, the town moderator. There was no slight ever intended. We had a request of a board member to review the aspects that are under the purview of the select board alone, so that we could do this while things were still fresh in our minds, as well as having information and questions when Greg, Alan, Diane Bucco, and I meet at the earliest possible time, which has already been arranged. So why don't I go around to the board first and get some impressions? Again, we're just discussing aspects that are under the purview of the select board. Once you're in town meeting, that's the moderator's purview. So,
Excuse me, Becky, since I am the board member who made the request, can I clarify something?
absolutely.
So I would have made this request even if everything went perfectly.
Mhm.
It's a common practice for a complex, large event that involves a lot of logistics to have what's called an after-action review.
Yeah.
So as the board, and so I would like to suggest we build this into our plans for the Springtown meeting, because it's just a good practice.
Yes.
So when each board member is giving their feedback on those items that are under our purview,
Mhm.
the intent is to give feedback on what went well as what didn't go well. It's not a collection of everything that went wrong. It is both the good and if there are suggestions for even further improvement, as well as things that didn't go well that we need to take action on. So that was the intent.
Well, thank you for the clarification on the intent, and it absolutely does make sense while things are still fresh in our minds. And to review is a very logical and I think prudent step to take. So I'll go around to the board first, and then we will allow members of the public to comment. Comments will be limited to 1 minute. And I would ask that comments be of a constructive nature, and with offering potential solutions. We don't need to, I don't think, rehash what we know didn't work right, or what we also know can be better done from the select board's perspective or application. So
Could you clarify what is in our purview and what is not?
we, the warrant is under our purview. We can have input on discussing, and Alan, please feel free to jump in, location. So mostly it's about the warrant and how the size of it
Mhm.
has come to. Greg?
Yeah, that's your primary role, is you're in charge of the warrant. And obviously, it's a collaborative effort. We're working with different boards and committees who are bringing requests, and there should be a good effort between you and those different boards and committees. As well as the moderator, Alan, obviously, is a frequent visitor to your meetings, and is always
Thank goodness.
looking for your guidance on some of the decisions that he makes. But in terms of what is, your call, 100%, certainly the warrant. Obviously, that shapes and drives much of what happens at a town meeting.
Logistics, what aspects of the logistics from a technical standpoint, contractual standpoint might also be under the select, or because it's under town hall employees' responsibility, would that come under the purview of the select board?
So again, a little bit of a gray area. But certainly, the work that Diane does is ultimately under your purview.
But I believe back to, discussing what transpired at the meeting is not what we should focus on, because that's Alan, that really is Alan's purview. So why don't we, if we can come up with questions and thoughts for when Greg, Alan, Diane, and I get together to have our discussion, our debrief. I can come with some specific concerns or compliments.
So obviously, before you dive in too much, obviously, there were some significant logistical challenges that prevented the meeting from running as smooth as it should have. Starting with a slowness of checking people in. That started us off on the wrong foot in terms of delay. And we were hit with a large influx of people right at that 6:30 time. And that it was a long code line that people had to wait. And that was unfortunate. So clearly, having more poll pads available when there's a rush is something that we need to make sure we have going forward. The other major logistical snafu certainly was the interconnection between the two rooms with the accounting software. And despite it working during the test session during the afternoon, it did not work that evening. And we're waiting to hear back from confirmation. The preliminary read from the vendor is that there's some glitch with their software and the school network, that somehow the network is kicking their connection out. It connects, but then if they go back in and modify the screen, during that modification of screen process, it's kicking them out. And they were struggling to get it reestablished. So if they're not able to solve that interconnection problem, we can just do what we did for the most of the evening, which was simply tally up the two rooms separately. It didn't take that long to do that. We wasted more time trying to get the connection going than if we had just resorted to that simple solution. So we will continue to troubleshoot that and hear from the vendor. And then more globally, in terms of the amount of material that we had before us, clearly too much to undertake in a reasonable meeting timeframe. Even without those delays, I don't think we would have gotten through everything. And so certainly I think a lesson learned is to make sure that we don't have that kind of volume of dense material. I mean, obviously, we've had meetings with 20, 25 articles, but I'll call it the density, if you will, of the material for each of those articles for the zoning one certainly was, in hindsight, certainly too tall of a task to try to get through in an evening.
And this is, I think, with more participation and deeper interest and concern, these are issues which take longer to discuss now. And so that's a good lesson to learn. We've got, it historically, that has not been the case, but that's changing. So we take that information and apply that to future warrant.
That certainly can be a good thing. I mean, I'm thrilled to see a strong turnout. I think that's all for the good. If we just need to be better prepared and organized so that we can manage those kind of crowds.
Yeah, was this the largest turnout we've had certainly in a few years, or since the dogs? I don't.
Yes, the biggest one we had for quite a number of years. Yeah.
Okay, we were not prepared for that number. I don't know if that was a problem on the software. It was, we didn't have enough hand sheets.
We had enough.
Voting.
That wasn't the issue with the software problem.
Okay.
But in terms of getting people into their seats quickly, we were not adequately set up to handle that kind of crowd.
I would say that as much as I didn't agree with the two rooms for masked, non-masked, I think it helped us be prepared. I wonder if we didn't have that separate room set aside initially for masks, if we would have been prepared for an overflow crowd.
Yes, we were doing that regardless.
Okay.
That wasn't driven by the mask so much as it
I mean,
was.
that was, we needed all that.
Yeah,
all that
absolutely.
space, regardless.
Yeah, Alan had taken that into consideration. He always does. Kathy?
A couple things. I agree. I was astounded by the attendance and I thought that was a real plus for the town meeting. And I think that's a result of some good communications that went out, both from town hall and from the planning board. So that was a great job. One suggestion is that we really publicize the start time of the meeting. I don't think we publicized as much the start of the check-in time at 5:30.
Right.
And whatever you emphasize is what people remember. So maybe publicizing that a little bit more heavily would get people there just a little bit earlier. Regarding the technical difficulties that we had, I wanted to better understand the contract that we have with that supplier. As you review the details of it, it should be what I would call an end-to-end success contract. A lot of times when you deal with technology difficulties, you'll have multiple suppliers involved, and one will say, oh, if my hardware worked fine, it's your software. Oh, my network worked fine, it's your hardware. You know, you get into this back and forth and no one wants to take responsibility and accountability. And the way you avoid that is by making sure the contract, which I think we are responsible for, as opposed to the town moderator, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're responsible for the contract. It should be, we pay them if from end to end, it's successful, not if just a piece of it works. So if our contract is not structured that way, then I would suggest we improve that immediately. Basically, it's called the systems integration function. Who is the systems integrator? And then just from a venue standpoint, I don't know about the rest of you. I found it very awkward to sometimes have information in front of me in the screen, the large screen they had for the select board and planning board. Sometimes I could see the cafeteria, sometimes I could see the voting, sometimes I could see something else. I never knew what was gonna be
Before
on
we
the
go on,
screen.
I
Yeah,
don't know if, is that us or not?
Oh,
Because
okay,
if
good
not, I
question.
don't want to
Yep.
be going down this road.
good question. I can feed that. If that's not our purview, then I'll feed that feedback directly to the town moderator. So we
Well,
don't next and look,
That was really 1623.
1623. So
I think Alan has something to, did you want to say something, Alan?
Well, that's an area, I think, of mixed responsibility, as in the case with the electronic voting system. The contract with the audio-visual technician is yours. But I did a lot of the coordination with him concerning setup and where he would be displaying certain things and how he would be running the microphones and the lighting. I didn't have any contact with 1623s though, so if the display you were seeing was something they were organizing, I didn't have anything to do with it.
And once again, I don't know, so for your team discussion, follow-up, just as a person attending, I found myself having to, look, and if thank God I brought my glasses, so that was just one piece of setup that was uncomfortable.
Let her finish first.
And just the last piece of feedback, it sounded as, once again, just as a select board member, forgetting who's accountable for what, the microphones, there are a couple of times when I think you and Greg and I were in very awkward positions trying to get a microphone because perhaps they weren't long enough. And
That's
I just,
always.
I perhaps an additional microphone, one for two people, if it's possible, that would eliminate that confusion. And then one more thing.
I'll make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you. And last comment was just to follow up something that Greg said, and this is, I think, more for the planning board, so I'll give this feedback when I attend their meeting.
Yeah.
But you talked in general about the density of some content, and from a logistics standpoint, I just want to make sure we're prepared. Our team is prepared to perhaps allow for PowerPoint presentations. That's a common technique used at other town meetings that I've seen to help an audience digest a very complex topic. So if logistically, that's something the town moderator wanted to do, or the planning board, we, hopefully you could discuss whether or not we're prepared to actually have that happen. Because I think that requires possibly different technology logistics than what were set up last week.
Well, there's a problem there, Kathy, with integrating those kinds of displays with the electronic voting system. As I understand it, because we did discuss it with them, not for this town meeting, but for the previous one, it actually requires switching back and forth between the electronic voting laptop and a different one. And and the time to do that is not insignificant. So it would be a delay factor.
So thank you for that. And the reason I bring that up is because of my prior attendance for many years at a different town's town meeting where that was a normal course of business. So I'm wondering if our technology support contracts are helping us adequately, because I know it can be done. I sat through 20 years worth of it. And so I ask it with that perspective in mind.
Well, if I've got it right, it's another problem with Turning Technologies and their electronic voting system. I don't remember exactly what the delay was going to be to make that switch. But it was significant. It was enough that I felt it would unduly delay the meeting and cause people to be restless.
So when you have that conversation just on the technology, I'd be happy to attend if you would like, if that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
okay, and
Well, let me just respond to the other point that Kathy made, if I could. I think she's entirely correct. It would be very good to make a much bigger publicity deal out of the check-in time as opposed to the start of the meeting time. I think the real problem to me there was that the check-in process wasn't up to the task of dealing with that crowd. But certainly my encouraging people to show up starting at 5:30, not at 6 or 6:30 would help.
yep. Thank you, Alan. And
I agree that it was difficult for those of us on the dais to see things, but I think those of us on the dais needed to see things less than anybody else. It would be nice if we had two screens and we could see, but frankly, we should know what's going on without having to look.
With one
Not
exception, I
necessarily.
couldn't tell when the green light was on and I should vote.
mhm,
That was a problem for me. It might have just been my chair and the angle. It was
if it
just,
wasn't in front.
I couldn't tell all the time when it was time to vote, and I wanted to make sure my vote was counted.
Mhm.
Clicking until it turns.
Yeah.
I kept clicking too, and
I vote
sometimes
14
it
times.
was still red.
Okay,
So,
so, what I will ask is, for when Alan, Greg, Diane, and I meet, which is, going to be
Next week.
yeah, next week. If there are specific concerns or questions that you feel along, with these that we ought to discuss, please forward them on to either Debbie, Greg, or me, or all of us. So now I would like to open it up to public comment, but again, we will be limiting comment to 1 minute. And I'm hopeful that we can have creative solutions to manage growth and diversity while maintaining our character. So hopefully constructive comments, not comments that are just rehashing what we all know. Karen Bennett. go ahead and
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Hello, Karen Bennett, 28 Lincoln Street. I give a lot of credit to Alan. I don't know that I could go through. I do a lot of public speaking and I can't imagine having that much chaos going on. So a lot to him. But like Kathy said, I also work in technology and I think there was a bandwidth issue within the building. We didn't expect to have 500 and something odd people, voting at that time. But in addition to all of that, so anyway, I think you should go out to bid if the contract is up for bid. It seems like the system needs some updating. Again, come from a back end software company, and I agree those kind of things need to happen. But another piece to all of this is that there was a lot of communication, as well as from the group that I belong to, out to the public to give them information that they needed to vote on. And that's why I believe we had so many people there, and which is great. And I'm excited about that. But I think some of the things the planning board could have done better is having an open forum rather than an open house meeting where people could have asked questions and they could listen and hear what the planning board return was. There
Erin,
was-
thank you very much. I do have other hands and it's been a minute and a half.
Okay,
But thank you, and when we've gone through other people, if you wish to speak again, I can come back to you. So if you'd lower your hand for now, we'll move along. Thank you. Alan, what did you want to say on that?
Two things, Becky. First, Karen, thank you very much. It was not a fun evening. I would like to suggest that we not take off the table replacing Turning Technologies. They've performed badly a couple of times now, and if what I'm told that their system isn't compatible with having PowerPoint displays on the screen because it takes too long to switch back and forth, that may be just another reason to reconsider. I realize that we've bought their system, but I don't think anybody wants to endure the kinds of problems we've been having.
Agreed. Okay, thank you, Alan. Any other public comment? Yes. And, before we go further, I need to ask Karen to please state her full name and her address, which we didn't get. Karen,
yeah, so you're asking me?
your name and address, please.
I did provide it, but it's Karen
Okay,
Bennett.
thank you.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
Karen Bennett, 28 Lincoln, if I could have another comment. I think there was just so much for these folks I've been participating on all these calls for a long time to get myself educated, and not a lot of people are doing that. It's too much for the residents. I think the smart thing would be to split up the articles and have time, to give them time to absorb and ask questions of the planning board and other people like that, so that they can make an educated vote. And right now, people haven't been able to do that. So I know this was a result of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they said 4 years of work. And I get that, I appreciate it and understand it, but people from the resident side didn't feel that they were educated enough. So I do think there should be some open forums.
Thank you, Karen. Go ahead and lower your hand, please. Thank you. I did mean to address the information disseminated by the Manchester Matters group. And I found that to be borderline in terms of tampering with voting, from the perspective that information was being sent out to households that was validated by whom? Nobody knew, because we didn't have names. And so I will say that the information that was put out there, I think was very I know it was misleading, and I know that much of it was inaccurate. So I think we just take the suggestions we're given and go forward with that. Jim Starkey, go ahead and unmute yourself and put your hand down, please.
Okay.
And you have a minute
Do them
starting.
in right order. Okay. Jim Starkey, 13 Tux Point Road.
Thank you,
I have
Jimmy,
been
but 1
working.
minute. Go
I
ahead.
have been. Excuse me.
No, we're just giving everybody 1 minute right now.
All right. I have been working with Alan for 3-4 years on this system. And I would like to tell everybody that they need to understand that this was a system designed for a different purpose that has been repurposed, and it can be made to work. But we need to bring the ability to run it in-house. We can't let it outside. We have to learn. What we don't know is, first, how the system was supposed to work with 2 rooms. They've never told us that. The second is we have to know how it is supposed to work. What tools are involved. Now, to answer Alan's question on PowerPoint, in fact, the whole voting system is run from inside of PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint plugin. It can be made to work. We just need to figure out how to do that. There's a lot of technical talent in town. I understand the system. Other people can understand the system. We can make it work, but we need information from Turning Technologies. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Jim. And also I'd like to say thank you very much for working with Alan and donating your time. Erica Brown, and you'll be our last comment. We'll move on with our agenda.
Erica Brown, I live at 57 Brook Street, but I'm speaking actually as the publisher of the Manchester Cricket. And I just want to actually focus on the Manchester Matters mailer, the initial one that actually used the town seal, because there were several. I'm very focused on that because I've been in touch with, I'm on the Massachusetts Newspaper Association. It's very disturbing that the misleading nature of that. Not only did this group use a clone of and the authority of the seal and the authority of the design of a mailer that was aimed at voters to educate voters the week before that mailer went out. That's what I'm focused on. And I hope you're focused on that as a town. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you have sought out the advice of town council and whether or not the illegality of using the town seal is a per unit thing, $50 per piece that went out to every resident, or whether it's just a $50 thing. Are you pursuing that is my question, because I am from the newspaper's point of view, just so you know, because it is something that was aimed at voters before a vote. This wasn't just a misleading mailer. And I will tell you that I have sought to find out who is on that mailer, who applied with the US Postal Service. And by the way, this also goes against the Postal Service regulation. It's called a government lookalike mailer, and it's prohibited by the US Postal Service. And I have asked them who is on the name on that mailer, who applied for that permit and who paid for it.
Erica,
There
thank
you go.
you.
If you could answer my question.
We are talking with town council, but for specifics, it's not anything we can talk about at this time because we are talking with town council.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, next on the agenda is the discussion items and thank you for the public comments we did receive. I've written those down and we have some nice constructive, I think, items we can look at. So, thank you. So on the discussions, we have first up, select board goals.
Has his hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alan.
Becky, just very quickly, I want to express my thanks to both the select board and the public for their constructive comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you. See you at our meeting.
Pardon me?
I said, see you at our meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're talking about the select board goals. Greg, do you wanna?
Sure. So we've had a few workshop sessions where you identified key strategic goals that you want to pursue. We've been working with Susan Beckman on helping advance some of the organizational structure to help us advance these. And so it's a time this evening, we have some time on the agenda to check in to see what additional steps you'd like to be taking and how you would like to make sure that we're advancing these down the field here. So you've structured them into five different categories. You have some governance goals. You have some planning, development, housing, economic vitality goals. You have a goal related to climate resiliency and being better prepared for climate change. Identified some goals regarding budgets and fiscal management. And then finally, goals surrounding infrastructure and making sure we're continuing to make progress on what is a backlog of infrastructure. It's not as bad as it was, but we still have a backlog. So those are the five categories. And I'm open to your suggestions, how you want to handle this part of this meeting and the discussion, but we can take those, each one of those topics one by one, if you'd like.
We have,
We divvied up some areas for each of you to be a lead on different topics. And so that's where we are.
yeah,
I can't speak for John. I'm not prepared to deal with a communication policy. Communication is just too broad. We agreed that we would work on correspondence
Mhm.
policy, but communication is really not a policy area. It's a broader board, and it has to be continuously fluid because the
Mhm.
style of communication changes practically weekly.
yeah.
You could just take the communication out of number 2, that would make me happy.
And you would certainly know that more than us. All right. Yes, perhaps we can go around to the board and just see if everybody had a chance to chat with Susan, right? John, any thoughts beyond revamp communication / correspondence policy, now just correspondence policy, which is what we thought
Oh,
about?
just in that area. No, Ann and I have promised each other to get together on that now for a few weeks. And we will do that perhaps once we get past the policy issues we're dealing with tonight.
And
we
past the
will.
holidays.
Well, not even that, but we just need to get caught up to where we are. And then we can get working on this correspondence issue.
I guess before we go further, we go back to what Kathy is really good at is when we want our target dates. So that's the second half of this, of the document we have, and it was, the packet was downloaded, so everybody should be able to see that as well. But I don't see that with our target dates, we have anything really written down. So with, do we want to talk about target dates at this point?
Our target dates, I mean, looking down through this, a lot of this is mostly, I think, kind of work in progress. There isn't an
Exact-
end,
right.
there is not an end point here.
No,
You're just
I'm
trying-
saying target start date at the.
Oh, target start date.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a
where,
different-
when and how best for us to get started on some of this.
So for items, if I could offer a suggestion,
Mhm.
for items which do, not every item on the list is ongoing.
Right,
So for example, I'll just take a look at the 2 that I'm driving here with others. Develop a response for the MBTA zoning law. We've got some hard deadlines there. So maybe right after the holiday, and maybe, I think you were gonna draft.
I'm working on that.
Okay.
And I will get you something before the holiday, and if
Okay.
you agree that it makes sense, we
Awesome.
get it out to everybody before the next meeting.
Awesome, that's great. So we can put those dates in there, right? And dates, my personal feeling about dates is they are a communication tool. So it's not something to beat somebody over the head
Mhm.
with if you miss a date. But the information that Ann just provided, that's really helpful to me. Thank you. Because now I know when to expect it and I can bake into my calendar some time to look at it, you know? So if we just view dates as a communication vehicle, they're not so big and scary. So, so thank you, Ann, for that. Susan and I had previously talked about the departments, boards and committee work, and I had sent in to Susan some specific examples of deliverables that we could use for a follow-up. Greg, I forget which ones I sent. The action item follow-up, I think, was one. I'll have to look at it, but there's at least 2 or 3 examples of documents that could be used. And so Susan, I know we're trying to get this done by the end of the year. That's our target. And maybe we can exchange some emails on some interim target dates for some other stuff. You know, some of the interim milestones that we may want to bring forth here.
Because that is what we talked about, is having this capability of
Right.
monitoring
Right.
follow-up and having all that, right, like a spreadsheet or
So that's, I've already provided those examples. I believe Greg and Susan have both of those. And, you know, if they look good, Greg, we could start using, you know, you could share them with Becky, and if she agrees, we can start using them at this meeting as a way, whatever we decide to do for some of the boards and committees. I just think it's a good idea if we lead by example.
and I would say it's not for me to approve or
Yeah.
disapprove, it would be for the board
Right.
to
To
approve or disapprove.
I look to Greg and or Susan to say, you know, because what I submitted is not, you know, gospel, right? It's a suggestion and an idea, but the next step, I think, would be for you to make improvements on it, throw it out, suggest something different, whatever. But bring those examples to this board so we can start using them.
Right.
So my point is, I don't think we need to wait till the end of the year to start using some of the tools.
Yes.
If there's something that looks good or could look good with a little tweaking,
Sure.
Mhm.
you know?
So there are some items that are a little more, as you said, with the MBTA zoning, but also you said the climate resiliency, Greg? Isn't there?
So, yeah, we'll have a presentation at your December 19th meeting.
Wow.
For the new effort that's getting underway. So there'll be an introduction to the consulting team and a timeline for the in June. So yes, we'll have that presentation on the 19th of December, and then a compilation of materials ongoing, certainly by the end of January.
So before I keep going around, does the board feel we're at a point to go around and talk about each of these items? Or do we need to have another meeting specific to this purpose, the board project plans, tasks, etc.? Brian?
I'm just curious, will this be something that we can touch on, weekly or, month to month, or was,
Yep.
part of the agenda will be to review this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, it could be not like a liaison update, kind of,
Very much so, very much so. But some of these, for example, under governance with foster cohesion and cooperation on boards and committees. That's something that in my mind needs more clarification or better parameters. How to achieve that. And so I'm not ready right now to go into that. But is it something we as a board meet about, or is that something that I sit down with other chairs, or? that's,
Just a suggestion, I think some of the work that Susan and I will be doing on the boards and committees, because she's taking an inventory of those
Yes.
boards and committees, right? I
Yeah.
think that's almost a prerequisite in some ways
mhm,
for that item that you're leading. However, something did come up at another meeting that I'll just mention here. It's directly related. I happened to attend the downtown improvement committee meeting, and there was mention there that they want to have more integrated discussion with other related boards and committees on certain issues. So that made me think that one way you could drive some work on this particular goal is to understand where there's overlap.
Yeah.
Right, between, so some of the things they're working on, it's a good way to get started, and I think there are probably some things off the top of your head now, but other items may come out as part of the work that Susan is working right now as well.
yeah, and the nice thing to that end is it would be so much more productive for people bringing ideas or plans forward if they don't have to necessarily attend however different meetings. Maybe possible, maybe not, depending upon boards or committees, you know, to which they have to present. But still, it's exactly that would help everybody have clearer understandings. All boards and committees, I mean.
And just as an aside, I agree with Brian. If these goals are the most important things that this board should be working on, we should have a regular touch base on it
Yep.
rather than something separate off on the side that could get rescheduled. So I agree with that.
Yeah, like the liaison updates, that's, yep. Making that. Oh, Brian.
Mhm.
So do we want to? Should we continue discussing these right now? Do we want to have another meeting on these? Do we feel that Susan and Kathy have a little bit more to organize before we do?
I think we need to organize a little bit more. I mean, be honest with the special town meeting, that's been more of a focus, especially since there was so much information in there. And I think we all had to try and absorb this, came to the realization that the public is never gonna get to the level that we were trying to get our arms around all of that.
Yeah.
So this has not been the highest priority, but it is now, or
Yeah.
among them.
Yep. Well, and it's, I think it's nice to get back to these types of agenda items that are maintenance. As opposed to trying to put out fires.
But one thing that.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Hello, Susan. Oh, you're muted.
I got to unmute here. Thank you. I just thought it would be helpful just to
And Susan Beckman, you have her information, Debbie.
12 Loading Place Road, Manchester, Mass. So I'm an extra set of hands here helping the board work through some of the topics on their goal list. What I found, Becky, to be useful, and I think we talked in general about this, is there's a couple of priorities right now to set the foundation. And that includes the ability to frame up the boards and committee, the inventory piece of that. I am currently working with Kathy, as we said, on different pieces. As a matter of fact, I had conversations with Debbie today about follow-up action items from board meetings. All of that will come forward. And what I would suggest is, and I like Brian's idea of keeping it forward on the agendas, but also that when we're ready to have the discussion about a specific topic, I can bring it forward. It can go on the agenda. We can review it and decide what's going to happen. But right now, what I was hoping to hear, and I think I did, is that there's 3 or 4 priorities, which we're currently working on. That's what we'll focus on right now. And as we go forward, we'll progress towards the next steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Anybody else?
Just an add on that, I do think there are some things on our goals list that we can put some, or some dates could be provided to us. For example, on the infrastructure side,
Yeah, I was just filling in some of those.
yeah, I could hear you typing it. But yeah, I mean, there are some things here. So maybe an action for all of us is to take after the holiday, we'll have our turkey this, Thursday, and we take a look here and see how we can fill in some of the blanks. Because I don't think
Mhm.
everything has to wait for the work that Susan and is doing. And we have an opportunity to not only add some data where some of the blanks are, but if help is needed, that's also, a good topic to discuss when we discuss these items. Hey, I'm working on goal ABC and I'm stuck. I need some help.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the team can figure out how to jump in and help.
That's
That's
great.
a suggestion.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have our appointment policy. With thanks to Anne and John. And that would be Ann Harrison and John Brown. Take it away, Ann.
But, in our discussion, of the, nomination of someone for the finance committee, exposed a hole perhaps.
Mhm.
It has been the practice that when a position becomes vacant, that if possible, the person who's vacated the position and the chair of that committee work together to find a suitable candidate and have a replacement done as quickly as possible. And it was suggested that perhaps it would be better if we publicize the upcoming vacancy and ask for candidates. And I'm sure that would have the effect of keeping people from looking for someone they consider particularly qualified, because you don't want to lean on somebody to join a board and then have the select board say, no, we don't think so.
Yes,
I think that's a good point.
So what should we do about that? Should we make the policy reflect what we're actually doing?
So a suggestion, since I brought it up last time, in order to prevent the situation that you're concerned about, because it's a very legitimate concern. This happens in private business as well. It's the same issue. It's been successful if when a vacancy occurs, it's public. And then after it's made public, the chair or somebody else taps people on the shoulder and says, hey, you know what? We have an opening. Would you like to serve? I think you'd be really good at it. And, so it's sometimes it's just the sequence of events.
Mhm.
Because what I heard you say, and I may have heard it wrong, was that, people get tapped on the shoulder and then there's a concern that it was all for naught. But I guess I just feel like if you open the position immediately upon a vacancy, and then
Yep.
it's perfectly acceptable and appropriate to encourage people to be considered. And I just think that's a better way of ensuring that we can get diverse viewpoints and more engagement from more people. So anyway, that's how I've seen it work.
I think that works in spots where there's an opening.
Right.
I think the challenge comes when somebody's term is up. And what are you gonna do?
And that, I did not comment on that. My
Okay.
comment was if a position is open. Then that led into a separate discussion last time on what do you do if someone's term is up. But my comment 30 seconds ago was only directed at if there's a vacancy, what's the harm in making it public and encouraging more participation from the town?
I do think that it depends on, and the one example that we all, tossing around is if you have an opening that comes up at a critical point in time when you need to have somebody in pretty much right away. And for example, with the FinCom.
Yep.
I mean, that's a situation where we have, but that's for a finite, this is just finishing out the term.
Right.
And I think it's a really good idea to post openings. I think there has to be sometimes, and there is that message in there that you put in, right, at the end about unless the anyway, that the select board can sometimes under extraordinary circumstances, where was that? Shall make exceptions to these rules only under extraordinary circumstances.
What are we looking at?
That's in attendance and that's in, boards,
That's
non-residents,
appointments.
but it's not a general statement.
Eligibility, tenure, attendance, term of appointments. Number 5, the selectmen shall make exceptions to these rules only under extraordinary circumstances. So I think it is a good rule. You see that?
Okay, that's in the old rules, we did not move it in.
And I'm thinking,
No,
I'm
we think
saying
we
that I
can
think
move
we
that.
should, because while I think it's really important to have the notification of openings posted so that the general public can
So,
be aware.
so, when you say publicize, an opening, cricket?
Yeah,
Okay,
cricket
so
is our,
that-
it's the official, you know,
Okay, so that has a week. At least.
at least. And then added to that is how the frequency with which the select board meets and the ability to talk with.
So we're talking, you know,
Yeah, I'm leaning towards what Ann has to say, and I'm more concerned about continuity. And I think that, if opening is there and the outgoing person, the outgoing member has selected someone and in consultation with the chair, then I think we haven't lost a month. Okay, and I would make this compromise and say that at the end of that particular term. Say, because this is someone filling a term. Okay,
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about two different things. So are you talking about just a?
That's all I'm
clarification
talking
question?
about is
Just-
just
Okay.
this finish. I'm not, yeah, no, I'm not saying, yeah, this is an extraordinary
Yeah,
circumstance.
just
You've
filling a
got
term.
fiscal, the fiscal
Yes.
budget the next year coming up. 2 weeks can be a lot of, 3
Oh,
weeks
yes.
can be a huge amount of time. As you well know, having been on FinCom. So, and that to me is an extraordinary circumstance. So I think for the most part, yeah, you put it out there, you let everybody know that there will be a vacancy of, a position available. And then exactly what you said, Kathy. What, Ann?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble following this. So we're going to publicize and not publicize, and we're going to accept a candidate from the chair, and we're not going to accept it. And we're going to have open, I really don't know what you just said.
What I said was, I'm in agreement with Kathy's comment and Brian's about consistency in terms of, that's a different thing though. We're talking about a typical opening. I'm talking about an opening where there's a time critical component. Say you have a mid,
I think right now we're specifically talking about a vacancy that occurs during a term.
right?
Okay.
And-
Everybody agree that that's what we're talking about?
yes,
So
Okay.
my point with that is that sometimes you have the luxury of time to post it. If you do, you do that. This very unusual circumstance where FinCom really needed somebody ready to go, this is an extraordinary circumstance. Most times not. You can wait to appoint somebody on some committees because they're not as critical. So I would say, yes, I agree with the posting it.
So the question comes up, I mean, say somebody moves away
Mhm.
Right.
and they're on a committee and they're realizing they're moving away and they're gonna do the chairman a favor and they know somebody that's interested
Yeah.
in taking their place. Maybe they got 1 year left or whatever. They've got a short period of time. What do you tell that person? If that person says, I'm leaving town, I've got to leave, for whatever reason, I've got to leave the committee and I don't want you to look for anybody.
That's,
You know, because, you know, maybe they do know somebody that would like to come on. Are you saying that, well, we're gonna make this a public posting at that point in time?
I think that's the point that's being said, is that even if you know of somebody, I mean, it's nice to give a broad group the ability to put their hat in the ring.
Mhm.
And
I
then-
understand that, but
it's, like I said, this is a common thing that happens in large companies. There's a perception that only certain people get opportunities.
Mhm.
And the way you avoid that is by being transparent about openings. And it doesn't
Right.
prevent anybody from recommending or tapping somebody on the shoulder, but if you post it, it's done out in the open instead of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, maybe somebody new to the town who doesn't know anybody on a committee yet, who still is very talented and could provide some important skills, could also have their day here and make a case for
Right.
their inclusion on the committee.
okay.
Because we
I
5,000
think-
people, we don't know everybody. There's a lot of talent in this town that we don't know what's out there.
And you're not gonna know unless you
Yeah.
invite. So as opposed to keeping in the same vein of a way of thinking, but not saying it's right or wrong, but to have, oh, this person thinks the way I do in terms of looking at an item, and I think they'd be great at it, not just because they think the way I do, but because we understand
Mhm.
that.
I think chairs just have to be aware that it's a good policy, but chairs have to be aware that that's the way that,
It used
policy should be.
to, we used to put things in the cricket when,
Not for an intermediate vacancy. I mean, we do, and we have another large topic in that direction.
yeah, yeah,
This
Yep, I
is,
see,
this
yep.
is, where there is urgency and, the vacancy has come up in the middle of a term.
right.
For a board that has a schedule and time limitations.
Usually, but occasionally you'll have someone who just, signs up for a board and then all of a sudden we're a committee and they have to relocate. Those things happen. There's no urgency to that. If you have a 3-year position and say 6 months, and this happened not long ago, 6 months into a position of a 3-year appointment, and they had to move. So that's not urgent. And
Well, from purely personal standpoint, I will be stepping down from the ZBA. Haven't decided, I'm in the middle of one hearing I want to stay on until it's concluded. I have already found who I believe is an excellent candidate. I've already spoken to Sarah Melish about this. Okay. And that's as far as I can go. He's anxious to go and keep, okay. I think he's well qualified, knowing what I know about the zoning board of appeals, okay. There's not a lot of people stepping up and wanting to run out, so I thought it was important for me I wanted to find someone before I knew I was stepping down. Okay, now, as soon as the hearing that I'm involved with concludes, then I will offer my resignation. Then what we're saying is that we make that public,
Yes,
and how long we keep it open for.
a week, 2 weeks.
yeah, it's not,
It's not a long thing.
Okay.
It's, like I said, it's a common best practice and it
So-
allows
So
people.
you tap your person, that you think, but that doesn't preclude another person
Right.
applying,
right.
and then the board picks the best person.
And if
Do I
nothing
recuse myself
else,
on that one?
if nothing else, if I may, if nothing else, and Sarah selects the person that you have tapped on the shoulder,
another face who she may not be familiar with will come before
Mhm.
her, and the next time there's a
No,
vacancy, you know, it's just about not having to know somebody to get on a committee, and that's the way it is. It feels right.
And I agree with that. I think that, and once again, yes, even those, this is temporary. You know, this is filling, and it can be filling remaining 2.5 years of an appointment, 8 months of an appointment, 6 months of an appointment, but unless it's a critical,
I think I understand. I will come out with verbiage, at our next meeting. That's the first one. The second is.
Yeah, let me just add one thing to that, and I mean, I've been on committees where it's been tough to get people.
Yep.
And when somebody leaves, if you can get them to be a recruiter, you're a little bit ahead of the game, rather than you say, okay, let's just post it and find out that nobody applies.
You do both.
yeah.
Well, that's only if the person who's leaving, you know, if you tell them that, you know, we're gonna post this anyways, because say, well, I'm not gonna bother to call anybody I know that I thought might be a good fit. I'm just gonna go because there may be somebody that'll show up. It's just that there's an effort that person might put out to try and recruit somebody. They may not necessarily be inclined to do that because they say, well, the public posting will take care of that. Maybe it would. Maybe it would, but we've had a tough time filling slots here.
Some of them.
Yeah, we have.
And others.
So I still endorse going this route, but that's just an observation.
Okay, I think I understand for the first point. Now, currently, what we do when at the end of people's terms
Mhm.
is call somebody from Greg's office, calls and says, do you want to be reappointed? And then they're reappointed. I had suggested that we might, instead of just calling that person, also get in contact with the chair to make sure that the person is not only willing to be reappointed, but is actually contributing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
we're done.
Okay. And I can make those explicit, but do we also as of July, publicize all of the positions for whose term is ending?
Yeah,
But I think we made that decision, right?
that would be in terms of consistency,
Yeah.
keeping consistent. Yeah, we do.
Okay, so everybody has to reapply
Every 3 years.
every 3 years.
Or one, depending on what it is, but yeah. It's what you do. It's I mean, we run every 3 years. We rerun. Why not? I mean,
Has anyone ever been turned down? I'm sure, obviously, actually, last month, there were a couple.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
In
that was
hindsight,
interesting.
yes.
That was posted publicly too, wasn't it? We got more candidates than.
then that was.
And that-
I think that there was a lot of the candidates who were recruited though.
Some of them, but it was still public and out in the open. To answer Anne's question. Do we not publicly let people know that appointments are ending? Is that?
Well, they're online, but have we,
They usually know, individuals typically know.
The individuals know, but I was just curious
have
what the
not-
current process was.
The current process is that anyone who is recommended by the chair and says that they're willing to serve another term, gets another term.
Typically.
And only those positions for which there is no current. Someone, the current office holder declines, then we publicize.
right,
And that's pretty much typically what we've seen the last couple of months. Right?
So is it the will of the board that at the end of each person's term, we publicize that term is available, that position is open, and look for other people to apply?
It's sort of, I think this could be done along the lines of when you post that position.
We can't post those positions. Their current behavior is
But
not.
no, what I'm saying is when we do, if we decide to do this, when we post it, we say, so-and-so reapplying. So that people know that John is interested in re-upping for bike ped. That
Okay.
position is available, but somebody is still interested
Can
in
I
it.
ask a question? Greg, what do other towns do? And if we don't know the answer, let's go ask. We are not
Yeah.
unique. We are not unique in this respect. What is the best municipal practice that balances transparency and inclusion with efficiency and continuity?
Mhm.
Okay, let's go ask. We don't have to solve it here tonight.
My personal experience is the chair comes to me, says, you're up, you want another term.
Absolutely, and that's good. And there may be some other good ideas that we are not familiar with,
Right,
and it
Yeah.
doesn't hurt to ask.
right.
That's all I'm
Okay.
saying.
When you say it doesn't hurt to ask, who are you asking to go ask?
I directed my question, comment to
Greg.
Greg, if he could go find out from other town managers or other town administrators, how they handle, appointments to volunteer committees.
Reappointments.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Appointments and reappointments. It wouldn't hurt to ask for both, I think, as long as we're asking. I'm sorry,
Yes.
Debbie, yeah. I didn't mean to.
Rockport does it the same exact way as you did.
Yeah.
Cause I was the one who did the whole reappointment process over there. So I would contact them.
Yep.
They would say, yes, I want to be reappointed. I'll put a list together. They would get reappointed. So Rockport does the same exact way as you guys do.
Let me be
Yeah.
more specific in my question to Greg. Could you possibly ask someone outside of Cape Ann? There may be some
Well,
other
I
good
think it-
ideas. Yeah, I'm sure you talk to people around Cape Ann, and there may be some other good ideas outside of Cape Ann.
But and I think this is important of comparable
Of comparable size,
demographics, yeah.
Yep.
Or size.
Yep. comparable size, coastal community, lots of options.
Okay,
Right.
should we have a mechanism for removing appointed committee members? We do not.
Yeah,
Probably should.
Just have, we have a recall for elected officials, it would seem that we should have a way to recall on, well, whatever the proper term is for appointed officials. Appointed members.
Okay, how would you like to?
Right now, you have an attendance.
Attendance, yes.
Right,
but
that's. And again, I
You could certainly use that same language that was in the
I
recall.
was just thinking, it's a good place to start anyway.
Right.
yeah,
That's,
It's typical, as long as it keeps showing up, we can't get rid of them.
yeah. So if we apply the same language as the recall for,
which is in fact there.
yeah,
Okay. So that one is-
well, when you say language, in other words, how is that gonna work? You're not dealing with a community-wide,
Malfeasance, smell.
yeah,
Right, for dereliction of duty, malfeasance.
Lack of fitness, incompetence, neglect of duties, corruption, lack of fitness, incompetence, neglect of duties, corruption, malfeasance, misfeasance, or violation of oaths.
check.
mhm. Yeah,
And I'm just, who's voting on or making that decision? Is that gonna be
You as a
select
board.
board.
as the board? In other
Yeah.
words, the specific committee or the
Select
board?
No, the
So
board.
the select board.
Select board.
Select board.
Okay, all right.
You may get a recommendation from a committee,
Mhm.
but
I think that actually,
you're the appointing authority.
Correct.
I think with that in mind, that's a little more credence. It gives some credibility to the board. And oh, by the way, it makes some people think twice as far as what they're gonna do. If they think that they can run roughshod without any consequences.
Okay. I guess the term limits question which was in the old policy, would be dealt with by, whatever, if the best practice that we can find in other towns is that people who ask to be reappointed are reappointed, then we have the problem of a board that just never changes.
Mhm.
But if we find a best practice elsewhere that has some mix of, yes, I want to be reappointed, but we will also solicit other candidates. Then
Which is
I-
what, yeah.
Yeah.
That was-
And the term limits might not be an issue.
then we can prevent the boards from fossilizing by.
That's a good one.
Like that.
Well, that's not to say that we can't speak to candidates. I mean, if they've been on the board for 15 years, say. You know, I think that can be an okay conversation with somebody. To say
True,
this
but
is-
I think Ann is correct in that a prerequisite for making a decision on that particular issue, would be to hear what Greg learns from other towns.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Because I know that I certainly know of many appointees who've done far more than 5 one-year consecutives and 2 3-year consecutives. Yeah, I mean, and they're dietary staples. Very fortunate for that.
Yes.
So we don't, I think that I
You just remain silent on that for now.
I feel to a certain extent, some of that is more important for elected than appointed. Because when we have an appointment, and if we're doing what we're talking about, where we will be advertising, then we choose, then your appointment term is your recall option.
You have control over that.
Exactly.
It's not,
I'm not recall, I mean term limit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ann, I saw the Fro Brown, I'm like, wait a minute, I said a wrong word.
Okay, I think pending the information from other towns.
Yeah.
John and I know
we get the gist.
we can make, right,
Should we go to
and
policies to delete?
policies to the rate. Yes. Yes. I think we've now got
No.
a procedure for deleting policies. We have discussed deleting all of these policies and moving them. And I suggest that we just accept. This is a second reading of deleting them.
I agree. May I have a motion to approve as second reading the put forward policies to delete or move as listed?
In other words, the sheet that's put together, this list, you move to adopt this.
I'm not moving, I'm asking.
You're asking for a motion.
Yes.
Yes.
I said so moved, sorry.
And second.
Okay, moved by Kathy Bellata, seconded by John Round, roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Brian Solacey, John Round,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. Okay, deleted policies and moved policies taken care of. Thank you, Ann and John. All right, we're a little bit ahead of schedule for the quarterly reviews. We're 6 minutes early. Greg, did you want to, let's see, we can do a little.
other
Yes, there are. I'm coming back to that right now. So we did Ann, we did Brian, John Round.
Yeah. Couple of things. The water group met last week, I guess. And we chatted about monitoring wells. I don't know, what monitoring wells are exactly what you think they are. Or you can check and see what the water situation is. in various spots, and we were looking at monitoring wells, both for Gravelly Pond and for the Lincoln Street wells. And we did get some quotes about putting some of them together. I'm not sure that will necessarily come back to us as a recommendation from the group. Because the lead time you get on any of these monitoring wells is like 30 days. And whatever, if you've got a problem in 30 days, it's going to be in your water supply. What are you gonna do in 30 days? So anyway, there was a discussion on that, and we will have a discussion next week on the rates and possibly coming to this group with some suggestions on how rates might be changed to encourage conservation. So we can look forward to that probably at the end of the year, the first of January.
Can I just quickly ask, would that be, having looked at the deep dive that Eli did?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
that's, his findings are kind of a baseline as to breaking out who used, I'm not saying who is the identified people, but what groups, who's using a lot, who's not using so much, and how many households are involved in each of those particular groups. So that's a driver for the rationale behind that.
Similar question, does it also include the information that I provided to the DPW on rate structures from drought-ridden California? I think it was Irvine.
Irvine, yes, where they jack things up rather dramatically, and
Where they segregate rates to drive behavior.
yes, oh no, we're looking at irrigation. I'm not saying segregating it because it is self-segregating, to be honest.
Yeah, the rate structure was directed at behavioral change as
Yes.
opposed to.
Well, it's the
other
most,
goals.
it's the most efficient way to deal with this. Very few households are responsible for a tremendous amount of the consumption here. And I'm not sure how sensitive they are on rates, but we may find out. So anyway, that'll be a discussion. We'll have that in more detail with within a couple of groups within the Water Resource Task Force next week, and then probably come to this group with the suggested arrangement and the rationale behind it. And that's it for the water. With regard to the DPW, I think we all got a notice about some folks on Forster Road who have a water problem. And Forster Road is unfortunately for them, with regard to this, it's a private road. So the DPW is dealing with that, and we'll see how that all plays out, but it's a private road, and a lot of the water lines that have been put in there were not necessarily town water lines, so the town doesn't feel a strong obligation here, but we've got to figure out something. So Chuck is on it. And Craig, you're probably on it too.
Excellent. Historical district?
Nothing of note there. I mean, we had a meeting then, I guess, at the end of October. And they were all pretty much standard items with regard to window replacements. There is going to be a public hearing on one window that is right on Bridge Street, maybe just 3 or 4 blocks up past where Pine Street, I mean, 100 yards past where Pine Street is, before Ashland. And there's a window that they would like to replace and make it a little bit different than what it exists right now, but it's in very, very bad shape right now. We're gonna have a public meeting on that next month and see where that goes. But other than that, there've been standard applications that have come, and I think there were 3 that were dealt with back in at the end of October.
Great, thank you. I think we've got 2 minutes before we get to the quarterly reviews. But I did just want to state a bit of a reminder that anything that pertains to staffing are not questions or not for us. They head up those. So if you had any comments or questions of those natures, those are not ones that we should have. This is just specifically about Chief Fitzgerald and Greg.
Excuse me, I do have a quick liaison updating question. We can do it after. I just didn't want to forget because I have a specific question.
Yeah.
You want me to do it now? It's just related to the last planning board meeting. They had a couple of public hearings, a few public hearings. One was on the marina expansions, Crocker's Boatyard and Manchester Marine, and they have continued that public hearing to 11/28. They've requested information from the Harbor Advisory Committee. So they can, that's one of the reasons why they continued those public hearings. My question is around the other public hearing they held, which was on the Pine Street field. There were a lot of discussions around parking and, they were doing their work as a planning board, evaluating the plans. And the discussion kind of expanded to potential traffic calming issues or pedestrian crossing issues. And my question is, what is the planning board's responsibility versus the select boards? Because we had a similar conversation on traffic calming, I think it was September. So I'm just, nothing, they continued that meeting as well, that public hearing until the 28th, but it's not clear to me where their accountability ends and ours begins. And I know Nate took some, he was the DPW lead there, and Cheryl Marshall was there as well. They took some actions to get some information, but it's not clear to me what should be brought here to this team versus the planning board. So, I don't know if Greg or.
So
a
certainly,
question to answer.
the speed limits are your purview.
What about like, it was just brainstorming. There was, how they phrase it, relining Pine Street to accommodate parking drop off and speed reduction. So once again, they're not asking to do it. It was just, they were mentioning techniques that have been used in other places, I think. So
Speed table maybe as the pedestrian crossing. And
so when I think Nate took an action to go off and look at some things, and it's just not clear to me, does he go back to them? Does he come here? What's the sequence?
He should not, and that was spending time on, if they had concerns, those are concerns they should, in my opinion, be bringing to the proper boards. And I don't think that's where it should be.
So I just need a little as liaison, I need a little help clarifying our responsibilities versus, or our accountabilities versus theirs, so that next time if the discussion kind of leads into an area, I'm better prepared to talk to it.
so certainly they can make recommendations.
Right.
But there are areas where it's your authority, not theirs.
So that would be
So certain speed limits.
speed limits. They didn't talk about speed limits per se,
any
but
alteration to the
alterations.
roadway itself.
crosswalks,
Crosswalks. Yeah.
sidewalks. Was that theirs?
Sidewalks can be theirs.
My understanding is that sidewalks have been committed all the way down there.
Yes, but then they talked about certain flashing,
Okay, I want to,
so that's my question. Yeah.
and
Flashing
that's,
light crossing and.
So so they can make recommendations that then would be brought to this board for approval.
and it's not necessarily something that they really should be devoting a lot of, I mean, if they have concerns, they
It was,
could send those through the chair.
it was just like brainstorming. That's all it was. I mean, it was all good discussion, good brainstorming. So I don't want to give any other impression. I just didn't feel prepared to interject, and now I do. Thank you. And more discussion on 11/28.
Okay, thank you.
So
Come back to those.
Rule of anything off property
Off property.
is going to be something that is probably beyond their
Okay,
authority.
okay. Thank you. That helps.
Thank you, Greg. Okay. Hello, chief. How are you doing tonight?
I use the footing.
No, me too.
Right out.
Absolutely.
It's so comfortable.
So, we're a little behind schedule in terms of the timing of this, in terms of the quarterly report. So, you and the chief, all of us, we had agreed to, a list of goals. And the chief has prepared a pretty thorough report addressing those goals. I think overall, he's done a very good job working towards these goals. Start off with dispatch. He's made excellent progress with that. He's really taken the lead for the town, working with the regional center, established very good lines of communication with them, and give the chief high marks. Moving this along. So I don't know if you want him to go through the list, or how do you want to handle this, but I think there's a good amount of material here. The chief certainly can speak to the progress that he's made. I'm sure you have some questions that you want to go over as well. And in areas where we need to drill down a little deeper, or still need to do some work. It's always a work in progress. So,
It is.
so I don't mean to dominate discussion. If you want the chief to walk through, or if you want to ask your questions topic by topic, it's up to you.
I personally would like to let the chief speak,
If we've all read what you prepared in writing, if you're going to read it to us again.
I'm just gonna go over the highlights. I don't have to. I'm prepared.
I'd be delighted to hear the highlights.
Yeah.
But,
Only take me a couple minutes.
thank you.
I'm just talking now.
no, but I did
Yeah.
that.
Timer.
No, you've taken time
The gong
there,
fell.
so no gong.
No.
Mhm.
So on dispatch, so we began the transition, as you know, working closely with Chris and Allison from regional. We've had several meetings with town staff. We have another meeting coming up on December 2nd with the harbor master and animal control. It's sort of like a meet and greet type of thing, just so everyone gets on the same page, how they want to be called out and certain things like that. The focus of these meetings been basically on infrastructure change, records management. One of the tasks that I had to do was create a spreadsheet of every intersection in this town with corresponding addresses, which took me a little bit of time, but we were able to get that done. Working with DPW to build out the safe lobbies, and we've discussed building security. Moving forward, we're going to continue on those monthly meetings. Sergeant Newton and Officer Machine have been identified as our records management system administrators. They've been attending the IT meeting groups at regional. And I'm on the Chiefs Advisory Board. I haven't been able to attend one of those meetings due to conflicts, but the next one is on the 30th. I hope to get there in the afternoon. In regards to our comprehensive emergency management plan, that hasn't been updated in several years. I think Chief and Fire Chief Andy Pascalis was the last one to do that. I've been working monthly meetings with our MEMA, our Region 1 MEMA coordinator, Matt. At this point, when I wrote this memo, we we're about 80% complete with that draft of that plan. However, I think we're almost about 100%. I just sent back some of the edits the other day. So after the holiday, we'll regroup and hopefully get a copy of that to you guys at some point for your review. I'm hoping to have the full draft of this in place and back to MEMA and signed by all the stakeholders here in town by the end of January. So that's a good thing. In late August, we reviewed the School Resource Officer program. Chief Francis and I, since it's his students are involved in the district, met with the district officials. We reviewed the program. Result of that meeting, we came up with some goals or some objectives for the SRO, basically to plan for her to be more visible and active in the school community. And one of the main focuses is her getting enough equal time at every building in the district, including Essex. We've all seen the important relationships that the SRO has built, and we're looking forward to continue that moving forward. And I think we'll have another meeting and a review on that sometime after Christmas break. On a personal note, I was appointed to the Chief Francis and I actually were appointed to the Mass Chief School Safety and Security Committee. It's a group of about 15 chiefs from across the Commonwealth. We meet monthly, basically to discuss safety, outreach, grants, and make recommendations to police training in this area. I've only been able to attend one of the meetings so far. The next one is Monday, so I'm hoping to get my feet wet and get moving with that. One of the things that we did with the school district is we actually ended today, as a matter of fact. We took training on a joint training on behavioral threat assessment. So at the end of this training, which again ended today, it gives us in the schools knowledge about on threat assessment. It basically streamlines the process, and hopefully the goal of the entire thing is to prevent something from happening, obviously before it does. So again, that training ended today, and I'm hoping by the next couple of weeks, we'll meet with the school safety team again and come up with the threat assessment team, which is basically going to be Essex, Manchester Police, and school administration. Our annual in-service is ongoing. As you can see, I've listed the topics. This year, it's basically focused on officer mental health, stress management, officer suicide prevention, along with our yearly legal updates and use of force refreshes. Training is ongoing every day in the department. Some officers have taken some professional development training. As you see, I listed, they took breaking and entering and evidence recovery. Sergeant Newton has completed his first phase of his FBI leader executive development, and I'm happy to report Lieutenant McCoy and Officer Machine have completed all 3 phases, and they have received the Trilogy Award from FBI leader. Fall, I was able to attend the Mass Chiefs fall trainer, which basically helps me with my annual in-service, get it over in a week. But they also covered 2 very informative presentations on affecting change in your agency, labor relations and management rights, and preventing officer crisis and trauma-informed police, which is really good topics to learn about. Lieutenant McCoy and I are going to the Mass Chiefs Leadership Training Conference on December 6th. And we continue with our monthly and quarterly command staff meetings and shift meetings every quarter. Our last command staff meeting was actually a joint meeting last week between the fire department and us, which is something that Chief Cleary and I are probably going to do every quarter, just to make sure we're all on the same page, especially now with a lot of moving parts with regional dispatch and a lot of new trainings coming. So with that, we've also been able to institute some workplace trainings. See, I listed those on the memo. I try to do one of those every month. It's through, I was able to get these trainings through Maya, the town's insurance company, which come free to us. And I know there's been probably some interest in maybe spreading that across the town services townwide. So we can, it's all free trainings, and it's good stuff to keep on going. Community policing continues on, and I won't go down the list, but Officer Mullins was involved in the cardboard boat regatta with Brian, and he probably made it about 3 feet off the dock before he went to the bottom. But next year that they have plans on building something bigger and better, so we'll see how that works out.
Can't be bigger and better, but power is pretty low.
It's pretty low.
That's a good trick.
But one of the things Tiffany was able to help me with promote was we had out of my monthly office hours, we held them at Captain Dusty's. Thanks to Captain Dusty's for helping us out with that. However, we ended up with over 150 kids and parents show up, so it was kind of busy. I know Brian was there, so he can probably speak to that too. But yeah, that actually worked out really good. Last thing we're doing, I brought them up for, pass them around to people to take a look at, come on, pass 'em around. Doing the training, trading card program, it's some officer recognition. We're gonna partner with the fire department, their union is on board with it, part of our meeting the other day. So it's gonna help us build a positive relationship with families in the community, give us some media coverage and some social media coverage. Give everyone a chance to learn the names and faces of everyone that works here in the police and fire, and you know, build a good reputation and again, help us be more familiar with the people that we serve. We were able to make this possible with the Hooper Fund through the Parks and Rec and also the Manchester Essex Rotary, which is a huge help to promote that for us. And on one final personal note, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I was selected by MEMA to represent Massachusetts in one of their 2 seats in Florida in January for the National Hurricane Center for training on hurricane preparedness for decision makers here in the Northeast. So that training again is at the end of January, and I'll be attending it with the Deputy Director of MEMA, Pat Carnevale. I think that's about it. Sorry, I ran through it so quick. I missed something, let me know. Oh yeah, one last thing we're working on is because of police reform, our accreditation, they've switched from the 5th edition standards to now updates with the 6th edition standards. So we're gonna have a midpoint review in March. Officer Machine is working on that diligently as he is the accreditation manager.
Excellent, thank you. Kudos to the being one of the 2 people chiefs selected from Massachusetts. That's big.
Yeah.
Well done.
Be good.
Yep. Why don't we go around and see if board members have any questions or comments? Anne?
No, actually. You mentioned a Maya boarded course. Can you give us an example or 2 of things that you learned from that course that, or things that you think are important for comment?
Just so the 3 courses. See what I put in my notes. So it's navigating difficult people in the workplace, creating a respectful workplace, healthy sleep environments for officers, which I thought was a real good one because we work so many shifts. It just gives us certain ideas and routines to work from. And I'm not sure what the next one's going to be, but I think the most the best one that I thought was the sleeping routines. After working midnights for 7 years, you have to get on this routine, and it helps you with your meals, your exercise, and things like that, just to make sure your body stays in check. So I think that was probably the most informative one that I.
Overall, I think the progress has been excellent. Have a couple of specific questions. So actually, I went back to the original goals document from June. So while I think you've done an excellent job of documenting a lot of things, this board did spend considerable time identifying specific metrics that we would be using to, as part of the performance review. So I would like you for the next iteration, if you could go back to the June document and look in the italicized section there on the metrics and just make sure that you're covering what needs to be covered there.
I kind of did that. I'll probably maybe list it out better.
Well, I can talk to,
Yeah.
there were just a couple of things where some numbers could be articulated. They're probably 0,
Yeah.
okay? But take credit, right? Take credit for that. The other thing I just wanted to mention on a personal note, I've had a number of positive interactions with the police over the past few months. One of the things we talked about in terms of community policing was not just the great programs that you've got, and I love the cards, that's great. But was just the daily interactions with officers. Can they be a little, can they smile a little bit? We talked a lot about that. I have seen a difference. I really have. I've had some great conversations with one of your members, team members, in a coffee shop. Just a couple of weeks ago, someone was working a detail and smiled, walked up to me, hey, can I give your dog a biscuit? That's a key to success right there. The doggy biscuits go along. But it's just,
Dogs, I know.
absolutely, but it's just those little things that make you feel as a resident that we talked to you about. And I just wanted to mention that I've definitely seen at least 3 or 4 times when the interactions have just been very different. So thank you.
Ryan?
Nothing, I've got nothing but praise for what the chief is doing and what the rest of the department's following suit. Talked about Sean, that didn't come from you, that was something that the department did, they did on their own. So it starts at the top and the community policing seems to be spreading, and so I think that speaks well to what you're trying to accomplish. I did have an opportunity to speak to Lieutenant McCoy last week. He tells me the morale there is so much better than it has been in a long time. Again, that speaks to that. And then finally, from purely personal standpoint as well, I think Andrea is doing a great job. I know an instance where she's been very responsive, gone to people's houses, trying to come up with a plan to help her. I would crisis, just in the ass 13-year-old kid. But still, I think that when the public knows that they can get response by calling the school and someone's going to respond to them, that speaks volumes. And then so the SRO program seems to be working.
Excuse me, can I have a go back? I forgot one
You
thing.
can have a go back, yeah.
I just wanted to mention,
Oh,
a couple of times you mentioned doing things with the fire department. I think I definitely need to call that out as something extremely positive. And, I agree wholeheartly with your comments on the dispatch, that's going very well. And we hear only good things from Chris and Allison. And, but I like the partnerships on these other things with the fire department.
That was, pretty much Lieutenant McCoy. Yeah.
Yeah, and Todd, kudos on the report. I don't know if you put this together quarterly and that Greg gets it and we don't. But we've got this one and I'm very impressed on the detail and I always suspected there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we just don't know. And there's a lot of training that goes into policing that's constantly updated, et cetera. And this gives us a feel for that. I mean, we see the police officers out and around, but what goes on behind the scenes to get them to a point where they can police appropriately and train on that all the time. This is really quite informative. So I look forward to subsequent reports along these lines. In particular, the Mass Chief Fall Trainer, is that a regular fall event?
The regular fall event, but it's geared towards chiefs getting their in-service done in a short period of time, but then they throw in these other topics every single.
All right, well,
It's like a 3-day event.
I mean, a lot of this kind of gets to some of the issues that we had chatted about a few months ago with regard to affecting change and labor relations and all that sort of thing, and constantly growing yourself as well as your department in terms of working well. And I certainly hear feedback myself with regard to that. Can you this particular fall, is there anything in particular that stuck out this particular
Well, there's a lot
event
to take in a short period of time, but no, it just one of the things I think that sticks out is you see other chiefs, from pretty much every other chief in the state is there. So they go over certain things and they talk about certain things and you hear about how other people have handled certain issues. So I think that the peer support and how you hear other people deal with certain issues is good.
all right, I mean, benchmarking and coming up with, stealing ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. Have to do that. And I also want to reiterate, as Kathy said, I know that you're making efforts to kind of work with the fire department more on several different fronts, and I've heard that, and that's great. Sure.
That was an idea I had, and we talked about it with Chief Clary about this joint command staff meeting, and I think after it, I heard good things from officers and firefighters on both sides, so I don't know, maybe throw it back on the board a little bit. You guys want to attend that meeting every quarter, that would be one welcome.
Yeah.
I'd love to sit in on that, yeah,
I would
that'd be
too.
great.
So, well, we'd love to. I, again, just wanted to say congratulations. You and I have been doing this now for a number of years, and it's been really nice to see how far in some ways you've come, and yet you're already there in other ways. So, and I regarding the Maya training, for Maya, and the respectful workplace training, I'd love it if we could get a live link or a link to that I think that could be very useful, as you mentioned, for boards and committees and employees in town, even just to learn that. I know Kathy and John and I were on
Know your responsibilities.
a webinar recently, and that I think was very helpful, really helpful. And the more of these we can all do, the better equipped we are to, I think, appreciate roles and responsibilities others have. So I'd love to get that line or link. And then the trading cards, I think that's such a great idea. And to piggyback on what everybody else was saying, the partnership and cooperation between the police department and the fire department is really wonderful to see. My brother-in-law was a fireman, and so I know there's always a bit of a healthy rivalry there. So, and I was wondering if we could somehow expand that information in ways the community can see that.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
so, I mean, you spoke about, and I wanting to go back to having it in the police department lobby,
Yeah.
things like that, and maybe even if we could do sort of a every other month or something, or a monthly highlight of a police officer in the cricket.
Well, I know,
Pictures.
something we've talked about is employee of the month type of thing.
Yeah.
And Rockwood does that, and they have pretty good success with it, so it's something we'll definitely talk about once we get these.
Yeah, I would also check with Allison and Chris on the dispatch, because they do something similar on their
Yeah.
social media. They promote certain employees and
Nice. Any other? Okay.
Actually, well,
And-
silly thing, when you're ordering the next round of cars, a little less tint in the windows.
Less 10. Actually, I don't think the patrol cars are common stock like that, but.
Just
Can't see who they are.
We're hopefully gonna go to electric vehicles this year.
they,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get on my good side.
Yeah. That's odd.
Oh, I'm sorry, one thing, so Greg, this was our first quarterly with the chief. So he would be giving you another report at the end of the year. So could we schedule for the January 16th meeting, perhaps, the select board meeting, that next review? Get that on the calendar, and
Yeah.
that way there's no misunderstandings.
Just basically take this, cut and paste.
No, he's gonna do a lot of great things. Just let me know.
Excellent.
Maybe more.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Happy
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
you
Yeah.
Enjoy the baby.
Oh, I
Not
know.
so much a baby anymore.
8 months yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.
Okay, next up. Right. Greg,
So how would you like to proceed?
I think if everybody is, in agreement, same sort of process? Does that work? Okay. Take it away, Greg.
All right, well, it's, as always, there's plenty to do and more to do than time to do it. We continue to plug along. So some of the highlights over the last few months, I've been able to bring on board a new health agent, a new position. We're funding this year through the ARPA monies. We have brought Wendy on board and getting her acclimated and oriented and pleased with the early start. So that's a good step forward for the town and bringing more resources and talent to the whole public health realm. Obviously something that COVID highlighted, the lack of resources that most towns have had in the public health sector. So that's, I think, off to a good start. And also know that we have replaced our town planner. We were able to quickly bring on board a new planner to take Sue's place. So Betsy has started up and is again providing good professional support to our land use boards. And I think had a meeting this afternoon with both chair and vice chair of the planning board with Betsy and outlining sort of key priorities and what areas of support they need.
Excellent.
So that'll help, and also she'll be giving good guidance on the MBTA zone and what we need to do next steps in terms of the submitting the plan to the state in order to take a deeper dive as to whether or not that's an appropriate opportunity for the town or not. But we'll get that paperwork in. We continue to be successful with grants, and we still have not heard definitively about the FEMA money for the culvert. We certainly hope that is coming shortly. All indications are that we have checked off all the boxes. We don't have a definitive on that, but we should be hearing soon. We did receive the coastal zone management grant. As you know, that's getting underway. We'll have a presentation to you on that come the 19th of December. In addition, a couple of grants that came through were as follow-ups to the local rapid recovery program. One is for an all-season special event. And so again, new planner and Sue Croft and Tiffany are all working on that. I'll be reaching out to folks to get ideas for a special event late winter, early spring, as a way to bring in promote some business for the downtown businesses. During what is typically a pretty slow season. So that is getting underway, as well as funding for some technical assistance. So being provided a consultant to help with what's called placemaking. For us, that would mean potential some pocket parks in and around the village, better signage to direct people to different parts of town, and parking as well. And doing some possibly implementing some public art. Spruce up areas of town. And then the last grant, just as a reminder, that we recently received was from the Seacoast Economic Council, and that was for the work out at Tux at the Rotunda. And so again, we have the engineers underway on that, and we'll be presenting different options to the community. Basically looking at 3 different scenarios. Raising it up in its current location, moving it out a little bit, in putting in the pilings in, it just makes it easier to put the new pilings in and move it. Or relocating it to the granite knoll at Tux. I'm sure that'll be the least favorite of residents, but I think it's an important option to take a look at. Just because of the difficulty of protecting a structure of that nature from future storms. So that'll be an interesting conversation that we'll have. A few other things, we, as you know, brought on Susan Beckman to help us with the governance project. I think it'll be important work driving not only a lot of my work and goals, but also yours, and getting things organized in terms of process, but also sort of an organizational structure and working with the different boards as well as department heads. So I think that promises to help us with our work, because we do need to look at when these streamline and get things done, because the workload only seems to increase. And so we need ways to be smart in how we work. So that's an important process. Able to negotiate with the current dispatchers, with that transition to regional. So that was a good thing to button up and is helping us move forward. And again, as the chief indicated, the process has been going very smoothly. Don't want to jinx it. We've been impressed with the regional's responses. They seem very eager to make it a success on their end. And that certainly is encouraging to us as well. So that continues along. We'll keep you posted as that goes along. But we've completed the quarterly reviews for all department heads. We do that on a quarterly basis. We did hold that training session for boards and committees. We'd like to get that on an annual basis. And hopefully that's something we can put into place. So obviously budget is front and center right now. A lot of time and energy going into preparation for the FY24 budget. It always seems early to be talking about that. But the timeline is so all the department heads have submitted their preliminary budgets to me. Andrea and I have met with them to go over that. Finance committee has joined us for some of the bigger departments. So they have a liaison for some of the larger departments. And so I'll be presenting to you and the finance committee a preliminary budget at a joint meeting in December. And then January and February is when the finance committee in particular will be meeting on a weekly basis to help through those proposals and do fine tuning and have some sessions with you as that process unfolds. There's some important decisions with the upcoming budget. Obviously, it's a more challenging year given inflation and sort of a big question mark about what's happening next in terms of is the recession coming or not, and how hard is it coming and all that probably on vacation. So we'll have to see. But anyways, it is a more difficult budget process because of those uncertainties and those higher costs. There's certainly pressure to increase many of the operating lines because of higher energy costs or chemical costs, et cetera. Capital projects are definitely seeing increases in cost. And so it'll just making those numbers more challenging to balance out. So we'll continue to present those to you. And also coming up is union contracts and coming to terms. Contracts expire for fire, DPW and clerical unions this June. So the goal will be to have new contracts in place before then. And obviously that has an impact on the budget as well. So there's a lot of other things happening, of course, a lot of day-to-day activities and interactions. Overall, I think departments are doing well. Got very good staff and they're continuing to do good work for the town. That's a real plus. Probably something that doesn't get recognized as much as it should. The people do a good job and they don't complain. And they get the job done. And so that's something that we can be very thankful for. I certainly am. So that's a broad overview. I'm happy to obviously go into other areas of deeper dives. And work with you as on our efforts to do better.
Thank you. John Round? Comments, questions?
Observation, it's a long list. You're up there in the same league as with Chief Fitzgerald in terms of there's just so much stuff going on. I think we're a little closer to what you do than we are to what the
Yes.
chief does because we meet here. But you know, in terms of staffing, and I put that very high on your list of a responsibility. We tend to, as a group, tend to make the major decisions because that's what a select board does. But in terms of staffing and getting the right people in the right slots, I think you've got a very strong team that you're managing, and I congratulate you on. I think we have fewer problems than a lot of other towns. And, I think in no small part it's due to your skills and making everything work here. You're on top of things. So I think it's great. One question, and it's not really directly relevant to your questions. All of these grants, how much of these are dependent upon 40A in the future?
The Seacoast Council money
Yeah,
will be dependent on that. The future dredging money is also to.
these are big numbers.
So this, the next dredging money, we're hoping to get 2.5 million. That's the maximum they'll give out. Because they'll go 50% or 2.5, 2.5 million. So we're looking at a $5 million dredging project.
Okay,
And then the other large one that's potentially in the works, if we partner with CST for utilities. So that could be a multi-million-dollar grant.
and that's also a grant that is under the 40A umbrella.
Yes.
Oh, is there-
So in the past, we haven't received that much. I think we've received 600,000 to date. But now with the Seacoast, we're up to 750.
Okay.
So anyways,
So when you say these grants are secured, I mean, for what you've described here, those are in.
yes. Yeah,
Right.
not all of these would be subject to.
No,
To the
I mean, because that's
40A
down
compliance.
in the future, but you were just mentioning a future. Rich.
Right.
That's just- In passing, when I saw those numbers, it struck me, I wanted to ask that question.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
good.
Brian?
No, I think to summarize what John said, we're only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. I think Greg is doing a great job in supporting us, making us look better.
Kathy?
Yeah, so let's, I got a lot of notes, so just bear with me. First of all, I just want to tell you about some of the things I really appreciate about your work for us, Greg. So in the past few months since I've been on the board, I just think you're an exceptionally strong communicator. I really appreciate your verbal and written communication skills. So when I really appreciate something about somebody, my next thought is, oh God, what would happen if Greg wasn't here? And so that leads us to a discussion that we did have.
Yeah.
Which is about your succession plan and that for all of your key team members. Have you done any work on your succession plan yet?
not beyond some, sort of high level conversations with a few staff.
Okay,
But
so,
nothing very definitive.
okay, so I think, I can't emphasize enough how important that is. And, you know, any one of us, God forbid, you know, you saw what happened on the news today, it's just awful. We need a succession plan. You're
Yeah, I could use some help on that.
okay, so
Definitely.
you can either bring it to this meeting. I don't know what the appropriate venue is. I'm happy to talk with you offline. I mean, it just, whatever you need, we're here. But you are an incredibly important resource to the town, and we need to make sure that we have the right succession plans in place. I also agree with John's comment. You've got a great team. I wanted to, I don't know how the new interim planner came to be, but just watching her interact with the planning board at their last meeting, she was excellent, excellent.
Sometimes you get lucky.
Oh my gosh, yeah, well,
Right
sometimes
place at the
being
right time.
lucky is better than being good, right,
Yeah,
whatever it takes.
absolutely.
She was
I'll take
excellent.
the luck anytime I can.
Oh, yeah, no, and she was great.
So I'm very pleased to have connected.
Other things I wanted to mention, I really appreciate that you have some excellent instincts on how to solve a problem. Sometimes we bring up a problem here and then, you know, you'll come back and let us know it's been solved and you solve it, and you have really good instincts about how to do that. And you're very good about keeping us on track with those external deadlines, you know, regulatory, whatever. You're just really strong. So once again, those are things that, because you're so good at them, we need to make sure your whole team is good at them. Okay, so going back to the communication skills, have you ever considered having your team rotate responsibility for writing the weekly item to the cricket? Right?
Yep.
It's a way to build their expertise. It's part of their professional development. And then it gives us a look-see at, okay, so-and-so might be interested, but do they have those, you know, get a really high bar to fill there, right? So try before you buy, right?
Yeah.
And it's just good professional development for them. So think of ways when you can delegate responsibility to them, not just because you want to get something off your plate or something should be off of your plate, but because it's an important part of their professional development. They can't grow if they're not given a chance. I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, you talked about the budget, so this will be, you know, the first budget cycle I'll be engaged in. This is not a time for fear, okay? And I understand we're all nervous, but we've got to lead by looking at things a little differently, perhaps. And I would encourage you to lead with conviction. There may be some underutilized services that we either need to pump up the utilization and get them as efficient as possible, or say, you know what, we really shouldn't be doing this anymore. And let's not operate from a position of fear. Let's bring those things out in the open and have a discussion. And I just, the last thing I'll mention is I really would appreciate some structure around the follow-up and the actions. I personally am spending much too much time tracking actions and follow-up. That's not my job. And I think you have a wonderful new executive assistant resource here who could also be leveraged to do that. I know I just had lunch with my former EA on Sunday, and boy, do I miss her. And I told her how much I miss her. And, you know, you've got a great one too. And use Debbie's expertise. It will help.
Yep. Yep.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do, Greg.
And
Kathy has a next room for.
that's why we mix up which way we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. You're doing the turnaround in the police is due to you. Thank you.
Let's keep it going.
Um, that you didn't mention it, but that I think was a tremendous improvement in for the whole town.
Good.
And we managed to do it without making anybody look mad, which is requires skill in this town sometimes.
Not sure it's 100% accurate, but anyway.
Yeah.
Majority of people, let's say, are not.
So, thank you.
Okay, yep, Ann said it, hard to go after Kathy, but it's no, there's absolutely nothing to apologize about. I am learning so much every time, which is a good thing. And yes, you've accomplished a remarkable amount, given everything else that's been on your overwhelming plate. But I would like to add to that list the great hiring of Sue Croft and
Yeah.
Debbie Powers. We are very fortunate to have both of them here, and Debbie, it's so reassuring to have you on the other end of that line. And I would like to say, we've not completely come out of COVID yet. I don't know that we ever will, but I would like to recognize how you handled and dealt with that. You have remained very level-headed and helped all of us in the town to find, I think, best paths forward through that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna skip that one. I'd love to learn more about the money that we're getting for the, from the LARPA or ARPA, whichever, if you want to put the local in there or not, and how that can be used for the event. Is it a one-time, that's just a question, is it a one-time use, or can we do it for,
It's a one-time chunk of change.
but could we do it for a week-long event, a 2-week-long event?
Well, it
or
could be a
is it-
month-long series of events.
Yeah,
One one idea that was kicked, you can do this at one time, one idea was kicked around was sort of our own version of, Manchester March Madness of different, they could be cultural events, maybe concerts, Crowell or the church here, a dinner and concert type promotion.
Well, your as Kathy said, your communications skills, your writing is so good that it'd be fun to put it out to the town as sort of a win the lottery of picking what we do, or give us the best
Best
idea of
ideas,
how to
yeah.
do, how to
Yeah.
create a community event. Anyway, that good wins on those grants. And I like that we've been getting more board and committee training options coming up, and I like that we're getting more, and I think if we keep doing this and having them
Yeah.
done regularly. Again, back to the meeting, John, Kathy and I were able to attend, even though it took me a long time to get on, and would not have done so without Kathy's help, because the email didn't come to me. But anyway, there was so much really helpful information in that, and I don't know if those come from your direction, the idea of those, but I think that's really good. I'll come back to that because that regards the budget. Is it possible to do sort of an employee of the month kind of thing, or a highlight a different employee and in
we talked about that. That was one thing that Tiffany was gonna do when she first got on. And then, of course, COVID hit, and we never got back to it.
Just
Um,
I think.
So yes, we have talked about them. I think it is something we could do. And I think the residents would enjoy it.
It's nice to know the people who help us out in the community, put the face and name together, but also recognize all the employees in town who do so much and have a way to be able to say thank you to them. Are there any problem areas that you think that you would, well, I mean, I know that delegation has been sometimes difficult,
Yes,
but,
it is. And that's something I need to work better on, I think.
well, it's to one of Kathy's points. we realized.
I would love to get all of you more out of the weeds. You know, tree hearings and sort of the appointment interviewing process. Those are two examples. I'll think of others, but I would love to have you spend more time on the big policy decisions that are coming our way. I mean, when I think ahead, there are some big issues that the community is going to need to address. And they're going to be hard.
Yeah.
Yep. Sea level rise and roads and infrastructure, hardening or retreating or reinvesting. Those are big issues. And I would love us to free up some time to focus on those. Because I worry. That if we don't, we're gonna wake up and say, oh my God, now what?
So what can we specifically do to help with that?
So I think part of it is being okay with giving up some of the small stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so tree hearings can be done by the tree warden.
Right.
You don't have to do them.
Great.
You know, we just talked about the appointment process. We didn't
Yep.
talk really about the interview process, but
Yep.
but maybe a couple of you do interviews and give a recommendation rather than
Excellent.
all five of you taking up an hour of meeting time to do that. I just think if we could just be aware of our agenda over the next few months and say, oh, wait a minute, did we really need to do that?
Right.
Similar to what you're asking about the budget.
I think that's 100. I'm so glad
National
you presented.
Grid,
Yeah,
DPW.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that could be a DPW.
What
function.
has to happen in order to make some of these changes, Greg?
What has
What has to
to happen?
happen?
You need to make that decision and delegate. it.
So as someone who is, only been on the job like 4 months here, whatever, I can't count how many months. I'm not aware of all of those situations. I suspect you and your team are. And is there a list of things that you
So we
could
can
bring to
certainly
us?
brainstorm a list like
Yeah,
that.
brainstorm a list, bring it to
Something more
us.
better than
We're
board
in,
members.
well, some of the
I mean, all of you
concerns,
give your
Well,
ideas.
just go down the agendas of the past
Yeah.
15 or 20,
Right.
25 meetings and you have your
Yeah.
list.
but we also, what is it that we can pass on ourselves or that needs to potentially be voted
Right.
by the town, or if it's
A lot of it is,
Bylaws.
a lot of it you have the authority to.
right?
or even state stuff. So that, but we can, once we compile a list, okay, so our homework.
Yep.
Is
Action to-
to, for the
action to-
next meeting, yeah, is to see what we can go down some agendas and come with our ideas of what we think are the get out of the weeds issues. Let those be delegated for next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's great. I still would like to hear from Greg's team, because normally when
Yeah.
we're a bottleneck, they're the ones that are feeling it.
Yeah.
We're slowing them down.
Well, I'm
So-
sure Debbie would have a lot of
There you go.
insight into
Yeah,
that.
Absolutely. Whatever is slowing them
Yeah.
down is probably something
You know
that we
what?
need to stop doing.
That's
You're in
That's
charge.
really good. I
It's,
mean,
it's also like when we feel we're rubber stamping something,
Right.
that's an indicator that it shouldn't be on our plate.
Yep.
If it's slowing down the team from moving faster, that's another thing we should take a look at. So I think it's great that we all look at the agendas and come up with our own ideas, but they're the ones that are feeling the pain.
So yeah, if you two want to chime in on this one as well, make suggestions in your spare time. Then that would be wonderful. And at our next meeting, which is, what, I don't even know what day today is. That would be December.
75. 75.
Okay, so next meeting. Bring those on 12/5. Wowie. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to ask about is executive meeting minutes. We should review those at some point.
Yes, I
And
mean, so, my feeling on executive session minutes, that they remain executive session. So in theory, you review them and decide if the reason for being executive still
Is
keeps them
still-
as
yeah.
executive.
right,
So most of the time you go into executive session are legal or
mhm,
union negotiations.
right,
Those are the two most typical, or very occasionally a real estate transaction. So union negotiations, in my mind, that they always stay executive.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're talking strategy.
Oh, yeah.
And even though you may have settled the contract, you're thinking of why you settled it spills over to the next round.
mhm.
But yes.
Some of the one, I mean, and when I bring that up, it's some of prior discussions or negotiations for properties that have not come to fruition might be helpful for a broader knowledge, if those can be made, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. So, but, and now to just bring it back around. Thank you, and we are very, very fortunate to have you helping and working for the town. And doing what you do here.
You're kind to say.
Shed
that.
a load
Thank
of
you.
work,
That's,
so.
But
Thank you
there's always abilities to do things better, so please
for all of us.
don't hesitate to bring those out. So that's another area I would love to just encourage all of you just to pop in and, every other week or whatever,
Yeah.
just to. So it's helpful, obviously you have a different perspective on what's happening in town and obviously have a more focused vision of what's happening in
No, but I
in town
think it's
hall, but
important,
it's,
yeah, for us
it's helpful
to
just to share that information.
absolutely circle back with you and
Yeah.
just even have that in easy rapport. I think the more we stop in and
Right.
do that, the easier. Okay,
So thank you.
thank you. So in terms of, we've got executive session coming up, but before we do, Kathy, did you want to finish your liaison report, or should we come back to that next time?
I think I said everything.
Excellent. Okay, and for me, Board of Health, couldn't attend the meeting, I was working. The Harbor Advisory, I was working and have not gotten my update on that. But as we like to say in the military would say is, we don't want excuses. We want results, so I will find a way to make it to these meetings. Then Council on Aging did have a meeting. And they are trying to grow their membership. This is the Friends report on the CUA. They've sent out flyers, I don't know, or just it's that time of year to make donations, and they've sent those out. And they're still wanting to establish, get support to establish a capital campaign for a senior center. They've been having Monday coffee and conversation, which they've done over at the Congregational Church. Thank you. And that's gone very well. Anybody over the age of 60 is welcome. So I'm not going to look at some of you anyway. And that's, I can keep that short. That's it for now. Okay, so with that said, may I have a motion to go into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20A, Sub 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, and not to return to open meeting.
Question, have we done the town administrator's report, or do we intend to do that?
Yeah.
I incorporated that.
You can put it in.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can be very brief.
We won't ask you to repeat all that again, but.
I might have to.
Yeah, construction, as you know, in School Street was wrapped up, maybe will be next spring. The compost facility, the construction is getting underway, so the transfer station is not open on Wednesdays, starting this week. And that'll be through the winter. Open on Saturdays, but not on Wednesdays. Construction can get underway. So that's an important point for folks, and we're trying to get the word out on that. We mentioned the sea level rise study, we'll have them in December. So on the ambulance, right, the vote was to approve the monies, and now we need to decide which way to go.
Right.
And so you know, the chief is anxious to have a decision which way to go. I think it would be helpful to have you and the finance committee have a joint session and talk through the options. So if you makes sense to you, we were targeting the 12th of December for a combined meeting for the preliminary budget presentation. And maybe we could have that same evening, you know, do 45 minutes or so on the budget, and then another 45 minutes or whatever on the ambulance.
Planning board will be in here that night, right?
You're right. You're right. So maybe we need to go to their Thursday meeting that week with the FinCom. So what is that, the 12th, I think, or the 15th? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that work for people's schedules?
Make it work. December 15th with the
So that would
finance
be
committee.
an evening meeting. Probably a 6:30.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we just need to make sure there's a room available.
Yeah.
Is that the night? No, the third Thursday is the night, the Thursday we reserve, right? For us, okay, all right.
My last item, so PFAS. Litigation is mobilizing nationally. There's an opportunity for us to join that litigation on a contingent basis, where obviously they get paid if they're successful, but we don't pay if they're not. So I'm happy to bring the firm in. AP recommends this particular firm that they have teamed up with. The lead of that firm that they recommend joining has a direct seat at the table with the judge that's handling this case nationally. So he's certainly in the know. Um, and I think could represent us well.
Speaking of getting us out of the weeds, perhaps we could just direct you now that we would like to join, rather than having somebody come in and do a presentation.
I think that's fine. Yes.
I second that.
Where would the monies, I mean, go
So it would help us if we have to build a,
to build that,
Treatment
right,
plants.
like Chuck has
that's
talked
that's
about?
what we would get.
Okay.
For, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
So if you're comfortable, I will get that paperwork underway.
Yes.
Keep you updated,
Yep.
and at some point, these things, at the appropriate time, we could have them come in and give an update.
good call, Ann,
You're the best.
one of the best. All right.
Okay, what I needed.
Thank you. Okay. Now. I have a motion to go into executive session as I stated. Do I have to say it all over again?
No.
Okay,
We'll plug that in.
Second.
okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round, roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey.
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
John Harrison.
Yes.
Becky
Oh,
Jake
yeah.
says yes. Thank you.
I got it.
Debbie,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Sorry to keep you so late.
You
That is
have
okay.
yourself a good holiday.